the KMNN studios, this is the Kids Morning News Network.
Good morning, friends. It's November 6th, 2024. 55 days left in the year. Welcome to the Kids Morning News Network podcast. I'm Alex in the KMNN studio. And if you were waiting for new episodes the past couple of weeks, my apologies. Sometimes things get so busy with work that I have to put this show on pause. It would be great if this was my job, but it's not. I have to work my normal job to make money to produce this podcast. So again, my apologies for the silence the past couple of weeks. I had some really good Halloween stories written too. Maybe next year. There was an election yesterday, but let's go right to the real headline. It's National Nacho Day. Nachos, which are one of my all-time favorite food groups, were invented in Mexico in the 1940s by a guy named Ignacio, or Nacho for short. The story goes that Nacho was the maitre d' of a club, like the host, and a group of women came in wanting something to eat, but the chef wasn't around. So Nacho grated a bunch of cheese on some chips, put them under the broiler to melt the cheese, then put jalapenos on top when they were ready. Nacho ditched the maitre d' job and became a chef. And his last-minute dish went down in history. Thank you, Nacho. So yes, we had a big election. You may have heard about it. 2 candidates, and that's mostly how things have been for generations. 2 candidates and maybe a few outsiders that you don't really hear about. But it wasn't always like this. On this day in 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected the 16th president, and even though no one else came close to beating him, he only got 40% of the votes. It was a 4-way race. The Democratic Party actually split and had 2 candidates that year. And Lincoln's vice president? Senator Hannibal Hamlin of Maine. You don't really hear about him too much anymore. Now wait, why was Lincoln elected on the 6th, and this year the election was on the 5th? Well, that's because Election Day was declared by Congress to be, and I quote, the Tuesday after the first Monday in November. So, it changes. November was picked because back in the old days, most voters were farmers. November was a good month for elections because it was after the harvest, but before the weather got too bad. And Tuesdays were picked because people had to go to town to vote, and travel was slow. So they could go to church on Sunday, travel Monday, and vote Tuesday. Wednesdays were market days in a lot of places, and people needed to be home by then. Another thing about our elections that goes back to the old days is something called the Electoral College. It's kind of like the way we elect senators and congressional representatives to speak for us. For the Electoral College, each state gets a number of votes equal to its number of senators and congresspeople combined. And in most states, all those votes go to the candidate that gets the most votes from individual people. So, in other words, most of the states don't split up the Electoral College votes, it's all or nothing. This system has been in place since the very start of our country, and it's also been argued over since the very start of our country. There have actually been more than 1,000 constitutional amendments introduced to change the Electoral College system, more than any other part of the Constitution. But for now, it's still the way we elect our presidents. It's riddle time. The riddle on my last show back in October was, why are teddy bears never hungry? Answer, because they're always stuffed. Okay, today's riddle is, what has thousands of ears but can't hear? What has thousands of ears but can't hear? I will give you the answer next week, I hope, but you've got to make sure you follow or subscribe to the Kids Morning News Network podcast so you don't miss it.
10, 9, 8, 7.
Bon voyage, Europa Clipper. That's the NASA mission that blasted off last month and is headed for Europa. Not Europe, Europa. So what's Europa? Europa is one of Jupiter's moons, and it's not just any moon. It's one of the most interesting places in our solar system. It's covered in a thick layer of ice, but scientists think there's a massive ocean beneath that ice. That's right, an ocean. Just like Earth, Europa might have the conditions needed for life. How cool is that? The Europa Clipper will zoom out to Jupiter and make dozens of close flybys of Europa. And it's packed with awesome tools. It has cameras to take pictures of the moon's surface and instruments to analyze the ice and the ocean beneath. Scientists want to find out if there are any ingredients for life. So why is this important? Well, discovering life beyond Earth is one of the biggest questions scientists have. If we find signs of life on Europa, it could change everything we know about life in the universe. It might mean that we're not alone and that life can exist in places we never thought possible. And here's something else. Exploring Europa helps us learn about our own planet too. By studying other worlds, we can understand more about Earth's oceans and climate. It's like looking at a different puzzle piece to see how it fits into the bigger picture. Now let's talk about the challenges. Europa is far from Earth, about 390 million miles away. Because of this distance, it will take the Europa Clipper several years to reach its destination. It can't carry years of fuel, so it will do what's called a gravity assist. It'll fly close to planets and use their gravity to slingshot itself toward Jupiter. It'll swing around Mars next year, then whip by Earth in 2026 before shooting across the solar system on the long trip to Europa. It'll get there in 2030 and hit the brakes to go into orbit. You could be one of the scientists studying the data and the images that the Clipper sends back. How awesome would it be to say, I helped find life on another moon? We've seen some crazy weather-related stuff this year, from wildfires in the west to hurricanes in the east. Some people today are building houses just to stand up to those kinds of events. Have you ever seen a house shaped like a dome? That's one way some companies are making houses hurricane-proof. They look like bubbles instead of boxes. One reason these homes are so strong is because of their shape. They're aerodynamic, which means the wind flows smoothly around them instead of pushing against them. It's kind of like how a race car is designed to cut through the air. These dome homes can be made of different materials like concrete and steel. One company even inflates a big half balloon on the ground to make the shape of the bubble and then coats it with concrete to make it permanent. Fire-resistant houses also tend to avoid being made out of wood, at least on the outside. They use fire-resistant materials like tile and concrete. And one approach is to make houses out of dirt. Yep, you heard that right, dirt. It's not just piled up though, it's compressed into big blocks that lock together, like giant dirt Legos. Well, why dirt? Because dirt doesn't burn. These earth blocks can withstand incredibly high temperatures, even hotter than a typical wildfire. In fact, they actually get stronger when they're exposed to heat, kind of like baking pottery. These earth homes have other features to keep them safe from fire too. They have special windows that are hard for fire to get through, and they don't have any roof vents where the embers could sneak in. I mean, a dirt house sounds like a good idea and all, but what happens if it starts growing weeds? Wouldn't it be cool if you could draw the playground of your dreams and then have somebody make it? Well, a 12-year-old girl in Utah named Rosalie Olson did exactly that. Her town started building a playground near her house, but Rosalie noticed something. It was fine for older kids like her, but her little sisters were going to have a hard time playing on it. So she put together a design for a new playground with crayons and construction paper. She made sure kids of all ages could have fun on it. She added labels and different angles to her drawings so everyone would know exactly what she meant. Then, get this, she asked to meet with the head of parks in her town. Rosalie presented her design to the town government, and it worked. The town was getting ready to fix up another playground, and they used Rosalie's design as their guide. This fall, the grand opening day finally arrived, and Rosalie got to see her dream playground in real life. Well, that's the show. Thank you very much for listening. Please follow or subscribe to the Kids Morning News Network on your podcast player, your podcast app, or whatever you used to listen to this episode. I will be back next week, I hope, and I hope that you are too. From the KMNN Newsroom, this is Alex, signing off.